Listen to me right now. Some of you are losing sleep over doors that won't open. You're pacing floors over people that walked away. You're crying over paths that don't make sense. But hear me when I tell you this, if it's God's will, you don't have to worry about the way. Because when God wills a thing, He makes the way. He doesn't need your approval, your connections, or your timing. He just needs your trust. You see, the problem isn't the plan, it's your patience. You want to see the map, but God wants to see your faith. You keep asking, how is this going to work out? But God is saying, stop trying to figure it out. I already worked it out. If it's His will, move mountains. If it's His will, He'll shut mouths. If it's His will, He'll make a way in the wilderness and water in the desert. So stop worrying about the how and start resting in the who. Because the same God who spoke the world into existence can speak direction into your confusion, peace into your storm, and victory into your valley. Tell somebody next to you. If it's God's will, I don't need to worry about the way. When God gives a promise, He doesn't just give you a dream. He gives you a destiny. He doesn't just speak words into your life. He sets a path beneath your feet, even when you can't see it. God's will always comes with God's way. You see, we often hear His promise and get excited. But when the process begins, we panic. We start asking, Lord, how is this going to happen? How will I get there? What if I fail? But if it's His will, the way is already made. It may not be visible, but it's already prepared. God doesn't speak without structure. He doesn't promise without a plan. When God told Noah to build the ark, He didn't just tell him what to build. He gave him the blueprint. He called Moses to lead the people out of Egypt. He didn't just tell him to go. He sent Aaron, opened the Red Sea, and provided manna in the wilderness. When He anointed David to be king, the oil didn't fall without a path being written. It took years, it took battles, it took betrayal. Every step was a setup. The journey was the proof that God's way was already woven into His will. You see, when you walk in your will, you have to make your own way. But when you walk in His will, the way is already waiting for you. God goes before you. He lays the foundation. He moves people, changes systems, rearranges circumstances, and shifts the timing of events just to align everything for His purpose in your life. You may be standing in confusion, but heaven is working in precision. You may be waiting for direction, but God is already setting things in motion. His timing may not match yours, but His order is perfect. Sometimes the reason you can't see the way is because God doesn't want you to depend on sight. He wants you to depend on Him. If He showed you everything ahead, you wouldn't need faith. So He gives you just enough light for the next step, just enough strength for the next day, just enough hope to keep believing. That's how God works, step by step, moment by moment. You won't always understand it while you're walking through it. When you look back, you'll see that every delay, every detour, every disappointment was still part of His way. When it's God's will, every no still moves you toward the yes. He planned every setback becomes a setup. Every loss becomes a lesson. Every pain becomes preparation. You don't have to force it, fight for it, or figure it out. You just have to trust that His will carries His way. The reason some people grow weary is because they think they have to make God's will happen by their own power. But the truth is, if it's truly from God, won't need manipulation. What's divine doesn't need to be driven by desperation. Think about it. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, it looked like the end, but that pit was a part of the path. When he was sold into slavery, it looked like rejection, but it was redirection. When he was in prison, it looked like punishment, but it was positioning. Every low place led to the high place. Every tear watered the soil of his destiny. Because God's will always comes with God's way. Even when the way is dark, even when the way is long, even when the way feels like a dead end. The human mind wants logic, but God operates in layers. He hides purpose behind pain, direction behind delay, and growth behind grief. That's why faith isn't about knowing, it's about trusting. Faith says, God, I can't see the path, but I know you're in it. Faith says, I don't understand the plan, but I believe you've already made a way, and when you rest in that, peace begins to rise inside you. because you realize that your life isn't just moving in circles, it's moving in stages. Stages that are all connected to His divine will. Sometimes you'll walk through things that don't make any sense, and you'll wonder why it's taking so long. You'll question why doors closed, why people left, why opportunities slipped through your hands. But later, when the puzzle pieces fit together, you'll thank God for not letting you rush into something that wasn't part of His way. The same God who ordered the stars and controls the seas knows exactly what He's doing with your story. His will comes with direction, even when it doesn't come with details. So stop panicking about what you can't see. Stop doubting because the road is rough. Stop assuming the promise has been forgotten. God's silence is not absence. His delays are not denials. His way is unfolding even in the waiting. Wilderness isn't punishment, it's preparation. The storm isn't destruction, it's direction. You're not lost, you're being led. There's a peace that comes when you realize this truth. You're not the one holding it all together. You're not the one making it happen, just the one walking it out. And if God said it, it will come to pass. You might have to go through valleys, endure storms, or face giants. His will never shows up empty-handed. It comes carrying the strength, the supply, and the steps you'll need along the way. So hold your head up. Stop worrying about the path. Don't let confusion steal your confidence. If God gave you the promise, He's already gone ahead of you to prepare the way. You don't need to chase it, just walk in it. You don't need to control it, just trust it. Because when it's God's will, the way is already made. All you have to do is follow. Worry is one of the greatest thieves of peace. It sneaks into the heart quietly, whispers into the mind repeatedly, and drains the strength that faith was meant to supply. You see, worry and faith cannot live in the same house. One has to move out for the other to move in. Worry questions everything that faith has already answered. It asks, what if it doesn't work out? While faith declares, even if it doesn't go my way, God still has a plan. Worry feeds on fear. Faith feeds on truth. And the truth is that if God is in control, you don't have to be. The reason many people stay stuck in the same place is because they're too busy worrying about what they cannot change. Worry makes you live in tomorrow's problems with today's strength. And that's why you end up exhausted, because you were never meant to carry the weight of what hasn't happened yet. God didn't design you to figure everything out. He designed you to trust Him through everything. When you worry, you are Chandler saying with your actions that you don't trust His timing, His wisdom, or His love. You're saying, God, I know You're powerful. Let me handle this one. And every time you do that, you rob yourself of the peace He's trying to give you. Faith, on the other hand, says, I don't know how this will work out, but I know who is working it out. Faith doesn't need all the answers. It just needs a promise. And the moment God gives that promise, that's all the assurance you need. The problem is that many of us believe in God's power, but don't rest in His process. We know He can do it, but we worry about when and how He will do it. We pray, but we don't let go. We ask God to take control, but we still keep our hands on the wheel. That's why peace doesn't come. Because peace can't dwell where worry is still in charge. Worry is like trying to drive with the brakes on. You're pressing forward, but something is holding you back. You're praying for new things, but holding on to old fears. You say you trust God. You're still losing sleep over what He already promised to handle. Worry magnifies the problem and minimizes your faith. It makes mountains look higher and valleys look deeper. It makes every small thing feel like the end of everything. That's what worry does. It changes your focus from God's ability to your insecurity. But you can't worship and worry at the same time. You can't stand in faith and fall into fear simultaneously. You have to make a choice. Either your problem is bigger or your God is. Either He's in control or you are. And when you finally release that control, something powerful happens. Peace takes over. Not the kind of peace that comes from things going right. The kind of peace that stays when everything is going wrong. Because faith doesn't stop the storm. It gives you rest inside of it. The disciples on the boat, the storm was raging, waves were crashing, and fear filled the air. Yet Jesus was asleep, not because he didn't care, because he was confident. He knew who he was and who was in control. The disciples were panicking because they were focused on the wind. Jesus was resting because he was focused on the word. That's what faith does. It teaches you to rest when others would run. Teaches you to sleep in storms because you know that the one who controls the wind is on board with you. Worry can't change tomorrow. It can destroy your today. It steals your joy, your focus, and your gratitude. It makes you live in a future that hasn't even happened while missing the blessings that are happening right now. That's why God calls you to cast your cares, not carry them. He never said you wouldn't face trouble, but he did say not to worry. Because worry doesn't prevent problems, it multiplies them. Every time you choose to worry, you add another layer of weight to something God already promised to lift. Sometimes worry hides behind responsibility. You tell yourself, I'm just thinking ahead, or I'm just being careful. But deep down, you're trying to control the uncontrollable. You're trying to predict what only God can plan. And that's when faith must take over. Faith says, I don't have to understand it to trust it. Faith says, even if I don't see it yet, I believe it's on the way. And every time you speak faith instead of fear, heaven moves. There is freedom when you let go of worry. You begin to live lighter. You start to breathe deeper. You start to see that God's hand was in the details all along. Every delay had a reason. Every disappointment had a purpose. Every closed door was saving you from something you couldn't see. You start to realize that the things you once worried about didn't destroy you, they developed you. Worry says, what if I lose everything? Faith says, even if I do, I'll still have God. And when you have him, you have everything you need. You can't stop the enemy from sending worry. You can stop it from staying. When those anxious thoughts rise, answer them with truth. Remind yourself, if God brought me through before, he'll do it again. Think about how many nights you worried about things that never even happened. Think about how many tears you cried over outcomes that turned out better than expected. If God was faithful then, he's still faithful now. So stop feeding worry with your attention. Start feeding faith with your praise. Worry grows in silence, but it dies in worship. Every time you lift your hands, every time you open your mouth and declare his goodness, you starve the spirit of worry. You remind your soul that you're not in this alone. You remind your heart that God is still in control. Because the more you worry, the less room you give faith to move. But when faith rises, worry has no place left to hide. So today, make a choice. Don't let worry speak louder than your faith. Don't let fear dictate your future. You may not know what's coming next, but you know who holds it. Rest in that truth. Rest in that power. Rest in that promise. Because when faith takes its rightful place, worry has to bow. And when you finally let go of the anxiety, you'll discover what peace really feels like. The kind of peace that reminds you, if it's God's will, you don't have to worry about the way. Delay is one of the hardest tests of faith. It stretches your patience, tests your trust, and challenges your confidence in God's timing. We live in a world that loves speed, instant results, fast answers, quick rewards. But God doesn't work by our clocks or calendars. He doesn't rush to meet our deadlines because he's not limited by time. He controls it. Delay is not denial, it's divine preparation. When God delays something, it doesn't mean he said no. It often means he's still arranging what needs to happen before you arrive. You see, there's a difference between being ready for something and being prepared to carry it. Many people want the blessing, but they're not built to handle it yet. That's why God allows delay. He's not just preparing what's ahead of you. He's preparing what's inside of you. He's building the strength, the discipline, the humility, and the wisdom you'll need to sustain the very thing you've been praying for. Blessings without preparation can become burdens, and God loves you too much to give you something that will crush you. When you're in delay, it feels like nothing is happening. You pray and it seems quiet. You try and it feels stuck. You wait and it looks like the door will never open. But what you don't see is that while you're waiting, heaven is working. Delay doesn't mean absence. It means alignment. God is aligning people, timing, opportunities, and resources that must all come together perfectly for His will to unfold. If He gave it to you too early, you might misuse it or lose it. But when He gives it at the right time, it will fit flawlessly. Think about Joseph. He had a dream at 17, but didn't see it fulfilled until years later. He went from the pit to Potiphar's house, from prison to Pharaoh's palace. Each season had a purpose. Each delay was part of the design. God wasn't punishing him, He was positioning him. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. Because God's delay is not a dead end, it's divine development. The waiting room is where God shapes your heart to match your destiny. The truth is, waiting reveals what's really inside of you. Anybody can praise when doors open. Anybody can trust when the plan makes sense. Faith is proven when you have no sign, no timeline, and no clue, yet you still believe. That's when God sees your heart. That's when heaven leans in. Sometimes He withholds what you want just to see if you'll still want Him. Because God's greatest work isn't what He gives you, it's what He grows in you. Delay is also a test of attitude. How you wait determines what happens when the waiting ends. You can wait with frustration, or you can wait with faith. You can complain, or you can worship. You can question, or you can trust. Your attitude and delay reveals your level of maturity. If you stay faithful while waiting, God can trust you with more when it comes. Because how you handle waiting seasons shows heaven how ready you are for harvest seasons. Sometimes God delays not because you're unready, but because someone connected to your promise isn't ready yet. There are people, places, and moments tied to your destiny that have to be aligned perfectly. If He moved too soon, you'd arrive before the environment was prepared. So instead of being angry at the delay, learn to thank God for His timing. He's not late. He's strategic. He's protecting you from premature exposure. He's making sure when you get there, you'll stay there. We often think delay means distance, but that's not true. God is never far. He's just working silently. The silence isn't punishment, it's protection. When God goes quiet, He's not ignoring you. He's instructing the future. He's writing details into your destiny that you can't yet see. That's why He told you to walk by faith, not by sight. Because if you could see everything, you wouldn't need faith to trust Him. Sometimes delay also reveals idols. It shows what we depend on more than God. We think we're waiting on Him. Often He's waiting on us, waiting for us to surrender control, to stop forcing outcomes, to release the need to understand. He waits until our heart says, even if it never happens, I still trust You. That's when the breakthrough begins. Because faith isn't proven in fulfillment, it's proven in waiting. You might feel like you've been stuck for years. You might have prayed until your voice went quiet and believed until your heart got tired. But hear this, God hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't ignored your prayers. He hasn't changed His mind about your purpose. He's just perfecting the details. The reason it's taken time is because it's too important to rush. When it finally happens, it will make sense why it couldn't happen sooner. There's beauty in delay. It teaches you patience, humility, and dependence. It purifies your motives and sharpens your perspective, removes pride and builds perseverance. It breaks your timeline and replaces it with God's. And when you come out of it, you won't just have what you prayed for, you'll have a deeper trust in the one who gave it. Because the real reward of waiting isn't just receiving, it's becoming. So don't curse the delay. Don't despise the waiting season. Let it do its work. Let it strengthen you, shape you, and settle you. Keep walking even when you can't see progress. Keep believing even when nothing changes, because delay is not denial. It's divine timing at work behind the curtain of your life. One day, the same door that looked locked will swing open effortlessly. The same place that felt barren will bloom. The same prayer that felt unanswered will be fulfilled. And when it does, you'll realize the delay wasn't a punishment. It was protection. It wasn't wasted time. It was preparation. So stand still in faith. Rest in His timing. Trust in His hand. Because when it's finally your time, nothing and no one can stop it. And when you look back, you'll thank God for every second He made you wait. because you'll see that his delay was never a denial. It was his way of making sure you arrived at destiny prepared, matured, and ready to handle the blessing you once thought was being withheld. Divine will doesn't need human validation. When God says something over your life, it's already settled in heaven. People can doubt it, question it, reject it, or even try to stop it, but they can't cancel what God has confirmed. His will is not a group decision. It doesn't need approval from family, friends, or society. What he ordains, he sustains. What he starts, he finishes. And what he promises, he performs, with or without anyone's agreement. You have to learn to stop waiting for others to see what God already showed you. Because sometimes the people closest to you won't understand what God placed inside of you. You see, when God gives you a calling, often hides it from the crowd. He doesn't send out a public announcement. He whispers it into your spirit in private, because destiny begins in secret. That's why you can't depend on public applause to validate a divine assignment. People didn't call you, and they can't crown you. The same voices that cheer for you today may question you tomorrow. That's why your confidence can't come from people's approval. It must come from God's affirmation. When you truly understand that, you stop living for validation and start walking in conviction. Look at David. When the prophet came to anoint a king, nobody even called David to the room. His own father didn't think he was qualified. His brothers didn't see his potential. But God saw his heart. Man looked at appearance, God looked at anointing. While others were standing tall, God chose the one left in the field. That's how God works. He chooses the overlooked, the underestimated, the uninvited. Because when he's in it, no amount of human rejection can block divine selection. David wasn't man's choice, but he was God's choice. And when God chooses you, he'll find you wherever you are, even if everyone else forgets you exist. That's why you can't let other people's opinions shape your obedience. If you're waiting for everyone to understand your calling, you'll never move. Some people will never support what they didn't hear God speak. They weren't there when he spoke it into your heart. They didn't feel the fire you felt when he gave you the vision. Stop expecting human minds to comprehend divine instructions. God's will is too big for small minds. When he gives you something to do, he doesn't send a survey to see who agrees. He simply says, go. There will be times when walking in God's will isolates you. People may label you, misunderstand you, or even walk away from you. But that's part of the process. You can't be chosen and common at the same time. You can't be set apart and still fit in. If you belong to God's purpose, you must be willing to lose comfort to gain calling. The approval of people might make you feel good for a moment, but the approval of God will carry you through a lifetime. Don't sacrifice obedience for acceptance. Don't trade purpose for popularity, because what's divine can't be measured by man-made opinions. Sometimes the reason God keeps certain people from understanding your journey is because they would try to talk you out of it. They would inject doubt where God is trying to grow faith. They would convince you to take shortcuts when God is developing your strength through the long route. That's why he blinds some people to your destiny. It's not that they're your enemies. It's that they can't handle the weight of what you're called to carry. They would limit you to their level of comfort. But God's will always stretches you beyond people's expectations. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark before rain had ever fallen. The people laughed at him, mocked him, and thought he'd lost his mind. But Noah didn't need their validation. He had God's instruction. While they were laughing, he was building. While they were doubting, he was obeying. And when the rain finally came, every critic had to watch what obedience produced. That's what happens when you follow God's will. The same people who doubted you will one day see why you didn't stop. You can't let rejection make you question your revelation. Just because others don't recognize your worth doesn't mean you're not chosen. God often hides his best work until it's time to reveal it. He kept Joseph hidden in a prison until it was time for the palace. He kept Moses hidden in the wilderness until it was time to lead. He kept Esther hidden in the palace until it was time to save her people. So if you feel hidden, don't assume you're forgotten. You're being protected until the right moment of revelation. The approval you're seeking may be the very thing God is trying to free you from. Because as long as you crave validation from others, you'll keep shrinking your faith to fit their comfort. You'll keep delaying obedience until they agree. But real faith doesn't wait for consensus. Real faith says, even if no one believes me, I still believe God. You have to walk like Noah, build like David, trust like Abraham, stand like Daniel, alone if you have to. Because when it's divine, you'll often stand alone before others understand. There's a peace that comes when you finally stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your purpose. You stop defending what God already approved. You stop needing everyone's applause to feel worthy. You start realizing that favor is not a popularity contest, it's a divine endorsement. And when God endorses you, you don't have to advertise yourself. His favor will speak louder than any rumor, his hand will open doors that no one else could, and his purpose will prove itself in time. So don't get discouraged when people don't support you. Don't let their doubt make you doubt yourself. Keep your eyes on the one who called you. Walk by faith, even when no one else walks with you. Because divine doesn't need human validation. The same God who began the work in you will complete it. The same God who called you will confirm you. And when he lifts you, no one will be able to take the credit, because everyone will know it wasn't man who made it happen, it was God. The path may be unclear, but the purpose is certain. There are seasons in life when nothing makes sense. You pray, you plan, and yet the road ahead looks foggy. You thought by now you'd see progress. You thought by now you'd have clarity, but all you see are closed doors and confusing detours. It's in those moments that your faith is truly tested. Not when the path is straight, but when it's uncertain. Because real faith isn't about walking when everything is visible. It's about trusting when everything feels hidden. When God gives you a purpose, he doesn't always show you the entire path. He gives you direction, but not all the details. He tells you where you're going, but not how you'll get there. Because if you saw the whole picture, you might try to skip the process that builds your strength. You have to understand, purpose doesn't require clarity to exist. God can lead you through confusion and still keep you on course. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not working. The path may twist, turn, and take longer than you expected. It's still leading exactly where he designed it to go. God doesn't waste time or pain. He uses both to guide you into purpose. Every delay, every disappointment, every closed door has meaning, even if you can't see it now. When the path is unclear, the only thing you can rely on is his promise. The promise that he's working all things together for your good, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave his country, his home, his comfort zone, but didn't tell him where he was going. Imagine that. No destination, no map, GPS, just a word from God. Go and I will show you. That's faith. That's purpose without a visible path. Abraham had to walk one step at a time, trusting that each step would reveal the next. That's how God works. He doesn't hand you the full blueprint. He gives you one piece at a time. Because purpose is revealed progressively, not instantly. When you can't see the path, God is often protecting you from what's ahead. If he showed you everything, you might be overwhelmed by what it takes to get there. You'd see the battles, the betrayals, the waiting seasons. You'd probably quit before you even started. So he keeps some things hidden. He lets you walk by faith so that by the time you reach the next stage, you're strong enough to handle it. The uncertainty you feel isn't punishment. It's protection. God knows what you can handle right now, and he reveals more as you grow. Sometimes the unclear path feels lonely. You look around and see others moving faster, achieving more, and you wonder why your journey seems slower. But purpose is not a race. It's a divine assignment. Your timeline is unique to your calling. Comparing your path to someone else's will only lead to frustration because you're not walking the same road. God custom built your route to shape you into what he designed you to be. Their clarity might come quicker, but your depth will be greater. Because when you walk through seasons of uncertainty, you develop endurance, and endurance strengthens your faith. It's easy to trust God when you can trace His hand, but real growth happens when you can't see what He's doing and still believe He's doing something. The unclear path trains your heart to rely on His presence, not His plan. You learn to say, God, I don't know where this road is taking me. I know who's leading me. That's where peace begins. Not in understanding every step, but in trusting every step. You might not know where you're going, but you know you're not walking alone. Sometimes the path gets darker before it gets brighter. That's when doubt tries to creep in. You start to think maybe you heard wrong, maybe you missed it, maybe you're off track. What you don't realize is that darkness often comes before direction. God allows moments of silence to sharpen your sensitivity to His voice. When He stops showing, He's teaching you to listen. When He hides the path, He's helping you walk by faith, not by sight. Because it's in the unseen that faith becomes unshakable. Purpose doesn't always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels like chaos, like confusion, constant waiting. But if you look closely, even the chaos has order. God is organizing what looks scattered. He's aligning what feels off balance. The reason the path feels uncertain is because He's working on details you don't yet see. You only see the moment. He sees the entire masterpiece. Same God who guided the Israelites through the wilderness with a cloud by day and a fire by night is still guiding you. They didn't know the route, but they followed His presence, and that's what you must do too. You may not understand why certain people left, why doors closed, why life took unexpected turns. But one day you'll look back and realize that everything that didn't make sense was actually divine direction. Every detour was a design. Every disappointment was a redirection. God never wastes confusion. He uses it to move you closer to what He promised. You don't have to see the road to trust the purpose, because God's purpose is never uncertain. It's only unseen. So if you're standing in a season where the path is unclear, don't panic. Don't try to force what's not yet revealed. Don't let confusion make you question your calling. Just keep walking. Keep believing. Keep doing the last thing He told you to do. Sometimes faith is simply moving forward without understanding everything. Because the truth is, God's not asking you to figure it out. He's asking you to trust Him through it. One day, when the fog lifts and the pieces come together, you'll see that every step was necessary. You'll realize that the uncertainty wasn't a lack of purpose. It was the very thing that shaped your purpose. The unclear path taught you to listen, to wait, to depend. It stripped you of pride and filled you with patience. And when you arrive where God intended, you'll look back and say, I didn't always know where I was going. I always knew who was guiding me. So don't lose heart when you can't see the way. Your path may be unclear, but your purpose is certain. The same God who started this journey with you will finish it, even when it doesn't make sense, even when you can't trace His hand. Trust His heart. Because one thing is sure, His purpose will always stand, even when the path doesn't yet make sense. There are moments in life when everything around you feels heavy, when the walls seem to be closing in and every door you knock on stays shut. You try to pray, but even your prayers feel dry. You try to believe, but faith feels distant. You tell yourself to hold on, but you don't know what you're holding on to anymore. It's in those moments that you begin to realize the real strength of faith is not shown in what you can do, but in what you can endure. Because sometimes God doesn't remove the storm. He teaches you how to stand still in it. You see, faith is not built in calm waters. It's built when the winds are howling and the waves are crashing. It's built when life doesn't make sense, when you're tested, stretched, and pressed beyond your limits. Because it's only under pressure that strength is revealed. If you've ever felt like giving up, you've done all you can and nothing is working, I want you to know that's the very place where God begins to move. When your strength runs out, His power shows up. When your plans fail, His purpose unfolds. When you've come to the end of yourself, that's where He begins. So many of us think faith is about having all the answers, but real faith is about standing firm when there are none. It's saying, Even though I can't see how this will work out, I believe it will. It's when you refuse to quit, not because it's easy, because you know that giving up is not an option. Because the God who called you hasn't changed his mind. The promise still stands, even when the path feels silent. There's a power in staying when everything in you wants to leave. There's a strength in holding on when every emotion tells you to let go. Because endurance is what transforms ordinary faith into extraordinary faith. The waiting season is not wasted, it's working. Every tear you've cried, every night you couldn't sleep, every disappointment that broke your heart, it's all preparing you for what's next. You may not see the progress yet. Something is happening beneath the surface. God is strengthening you for the weight of what he's about to place in your hands. Think about Joseph. He had dreams of greatness, of purpose, of divine elevation. But before the palace came the pit, and before the promise came the prison. He went through betrayal, rejection, and false accusation, yet he never let bitterness destroy his faith. He stayed faithful when there was no evidence that God was working. He endured even when the process looked nothing like the promise. And that's what endurance is, holding on to what God said, even when what you see contradicts it. Sometimes you've got to remind yourself that waiting is not a punishment. It's a process. Just because it's taking time doesn't mean it's not working. You might feel like you're stuck, but God is preparing you in private for what he'll reveal in public. The strength you're building now will sustain you when the blessing comes. Because if he gave it to you too soon, it might crush you. But when you've endured, when you've walked through fire and refused to give up, you'll be ready to carry the weight of your destiny. Endurance doesn't mean pretending you're not tired. It means you keep going even though you are. It means you wipe your tears, straighten your back, and keep walking in faith. Because sometimes victory doesn't come from fighting harder. It comes from standing longer. The scripture says, having done all to stand, stand therefore. That means even when you've prayed, even when you've cried, even when you've done everything you can, don't move. Stay planted in your faith. Stay grounded in your trust, because when the storm passes, you'll still be standing. And let me tell you something, storms don't last forever. The enemy may try to convince you that this pain will never end. This season will last forever, but he's a liar. Every storm has an expiration date. Every trial has a finish line. You just have to outlast it. You don't have to be the strongest. You just have to be the most consistent. The ones who make it through aren't always the fastest or the smartest. They're the ones who refuse to quit. There's a reason you faced what you faced. God didn't let those challenges come to break you. He allowed them to build you. Every time you thought you couldn't make it, but did, that was endurance. Every time you were misunderstood but stayed humble, that was endurance. Every time you were overlooked but didn't lose faith, that was endurance. That endurance is shaping you into someone who can carry glory without pride, blessings without forgetting where you came from, and success without losing sight of the source. You may not realize it, but you're stronger than you think. You've survived things that should have destroyed you. You've made it through storms that others didn't. You've walked through valleys and still kept your praise. You've been hurt, yet you still choose hope. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's endurance. That's faith in action. And when you endure, you prove to heaven and hell that your faith isn't conditional enough. You're not trusting God because life is easy. You're trusting him because he's worthy, even when it's not. So if you're in a season that feels like too much, I want to remind you, you're not here by accident. You're being prepared, refined, and strengthened for something greater. Don't let weariness make you walk away from what you prayed for. The enemy can't defeat you, but he will try to exhaust you. That's why you have to learn to rest in God, not run from him. When you can't carry the weight anymore, give it to him. When you don't have the words, let your tears speak. When you don't have the strength, let his spirit sustain you. Because endurance is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about waking up each day and saying, I may not understand this season. I'm still here. And as long as you're still here, that means purpose is still alive. The same God who started this good work in you will finish it. He will not leave you halfway. You just have to keep standing, keep believing, and keep holding on. And one day, when the pain turns to peace, confusion gives way to clarity. When the waiting season finally ends, you'll look back and see that it was worth it. Every delay, every tear, every lonely night, it all had meaning, because endurance doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes you. It makes you stronger, wiser, deeper, and more grateful. So don't give up. What you're carrying is too valuable. The path may be rough, but the promise is real. And if you can just hold on a little longer, you'll see that the very thing that tried to break you was what built you. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to wait. We live in a world that glorifies movement, quick results, instant answers, fast progress. But the truth is, some of the most powerful things God does in your life happen in silence, in stillness, in the waiting. When it feels like nothing is happening, something is actually being prepared. When you feel like you've been forgotten, you're being positioned. Waiting is not wasted time. It's divine preparation. God doesn't delay to deny you. He delays to develop you. Waiting is one of the greatest tests of faith. It exposes what you really believe. Because when the miracle doesn't come right away, when the door doesn't open, the answer seems far away. That's when faith moves from a feeling to a choice. Anyone can believe when things happen quickly, but it takes spiritual maturity to keep trusting when heaven is quiet. That's when you discover whether your faith is built on results or on relationship. When God seems silent, He's not gone. He's strengthening your roots. He's deepening your trust. He's teaching you that His timing is not your timing. His timing is always perfect. Think about how many people in Scripture had to wait. Noah waited while building an ark with no rain in sight. Abraham waited decades for a son. Joseph waited years in prison for a promise that seemed forgotten. David waited in the wilderness after being anointed king. Every one of them faced seasons of waiting that didn't make sense. But when the time came, every promise God made was fulfilled. Waiting never means denial with God. It means development. He's developing patience, endurance, and character within you so you can handle what's coming. We get frustrated because we want God to move according to our calendar, but He doesn't work by deadlines. He works by design. He's not concerned with how long it takes. He's concerned with who you become while you wait. Because if the blessing arrives before you're ready, what was meant to build you can break you. The waiting season is where God prepares you for the weight of what's ahead. It's where He refines your motives, humbles your pride, and teaches you to depend on Him alone. Waiting can be lonely. You see others being blessed, moving forward, living the life you've prayed for, and you wonder why your turn hasn't come. You start to question yourself, your value, even your prayers. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. There's a difference. God is aligning things behind the scenes, moving hearts, arranging circumstances, opening doors that you can't see yet. The delay is not a rejection, it's protection. Because sometimes what you want right now could destroy you if you got it too soon. While you wait, you have to guard your heart against bitterness. Don't let impatience make you doubt God's promise. Waiting doesn't mean you're forgotten. It means you're favored. God loves you too much to rush His work in you. You may think you're ready. God knows what still needs to grow. Maybe your faith needs to mature, your perspective needs to shift, or your endurance needs to deepen. Whatever it is, trust that this season has a purpose. There's a reason it's taking time. There's something being built in the waiting that can't be built in the blessing. Waiting also reveals your priorities. Are you waiting for God, or are you waiting for what God can give you? When your desire for the blessing outweighs your desire for the one who blesses, you've lost sight of what truly matters. Waiting teaches you to seek His presence more than His promises. It teaches you to love the giver, not just the gift. And when you reach that place where you can say, even if it doesn't happen when I want it to, I still trust you. That's when you pass the test of waiting. You may not realize it, but while you're waiting, God is working on both sides. He's not just preparing the blessing for you, He's preparing you for the blessing. He's shaping your heart, refining your spirit, molding your attitude so that when the moment arrives, you won't fumble it. Because the truth is, what you're praying for is often bigger than you think. God knows you'll need stronger faith to sustain it. Waiting also has a way of exposing impatience in us. We start trying to help God out, forcing things that aren't ready, opening doors that He closed for a reason. But every time we try to speed up the process, we end up slowing down the progress. Abraham did it when he took matters into his own hands instead of waiting for Isaac. And the result was years of unnecessary struggle. Doesn't need your help. He needs your trust. When you stop trying to control the outcome, you make room for Him to do what only He can do. It's also a peace that comes when you finally surrender the time into Him. You stop striving. You stop comparing. You stop worrying about when it's going to happen. You start to rest in the truth that if it's meant to be, it will be. And no force in hell can stop it. That's the beauty of waiting with faith. You stop seeing it as a delay and start seeing it as divine design. You start thanking Him for what He's doing that you can't yet see. You start walking with a quiet confidence that says, I may not have it yet, but I know it's on the way. Yeah, and one day when the waiting ends and the promise comes to pass, you'll understand why it took so long. You'll look back and realize that if it had happened any sooner, you wouldn't have been ready. The pain, the patience, the long nights, they'll all make sense because what God has for you is worth the wait. When it finally arrives, you won't have to force it, beg for it, chase it. It will fit perfectly, peacefully, and powerfully into your life. So don't let impatience make you walk away from what you've prayed for. Don't let delay make you doubt destiny. The waiting room may be uncomfortable, but it's holy ground. It's where faith matures, where trust deepens, character is formed. Keep believing, keep preparing, keep worshiping. Because even if it doesn't look like it, God is working. And when the time is right, not your time, but what He promised will unfold effortlessly. You won't have to fight for it. You'll just have to be ready to receive it. Sometimes life will take you through a storm so heavy that it feels like you can't see what's ahead of you. You wake up each day hoping for relief, but the same winds blow, the same waves crash, and the same darkness surrounds you. You cry out, asking, God, where are you in all this? It's not that you don't believe He exists. It's that you can't feel His presence in the middle of your pain. Here's the truth. Just because you can't see God working doesn't mean He isn't. In fact, it's often in the moments when you feel abandoned that He's the closest. He's not absent in your storm. He's hidden in it, working behind the scenes to bring something out of it that will transform you forever. When you're in the storm, it's easy to panic. It's easy to think that the wind is too strong, that the boat is too small, that the waves are too big. But storms don't come to destroy you. They come to reveal what's inside you. You never know the strength of your faith until it's tested. You never realize how deep your trust runs until everything you relied on is shaking. Storms strip away the illusions of control. They remind you that you were never steering the ship to begin with. You were always a passenger on God's course. When you finally accept that He's the one in control, peace begins to settle where panic once lived. Remember the story when the disciples were caught in a storm on the sea and Jesus was asleep in the boat. They panicked, thinking they were about to die, and cried out, Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing? Isn't that how we sound sometimes? When life gets hard, we start to question whether God still cares. We think that His silence means His absence. But Jesus stood up, rebuked the storm, and said, Peace, be still. And immediately everything calmed. What they didn't understand was that as long as He was in the boat, they were never in danger. The storm wasn't stronger than His presence. The waves weren't greater than His word. That same truth still stands today. If God is with you, the storm cannot destroy you. It may shake you, but it can't sink you. The storms of life come in many forms: heartbreak, betrayal, loss, failure, uncertainty, sickness. But every storm carries a lesson. Sometimes the storm comes to remove people who can't go where you're headed. Sometimes it comes to teach you to rely on faith, not feelings. Sometimes it comes to strip away the distractions that have taken your focus off God. Storms don't come to steal your purpose, they come to refine it. They burn away the excess, leaving only what's pure and strong. You might be asking, why would God let me go through this? Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. If your life was always calm, you'd never learn courage. If the sky was always clear, you'd never need faith. It's in the storm that your relationship with God becomes real. It's when everything else is stripped away that you discover who He really is. Your protector, your provider, your peace. He allows the winds to blow just long enough for you to realize that what you thought would break you is actually building you. Every storm has a purpose, even when you don't understand it. The storm that came to shake you may actually be the storm that saves you. Sometimes God allows the storm not to show you how powerful He is, but to show you how strong you've become through Him. Because when the storm ends, and it will end, you'll walk out of it with more faith, more wisdom, and more gratitude than you had before it began. You'll realize that the same waves that tried to drown you actually carried you to your next destination. You can't avoid every storm. You can choose how you respond to it. You can either panic and give up, or you can stand still and trust. You can either focus on the wind. You can focus on the one who controls it. The storm wants your attention because it feeds on fear. But faith silences fear. When you fix your eyes on God instead of the chaos, you'll find calm even in the middle of the waves. The storm may not stop immediately, but your heart will. That's when peace steps in, not because the situation changed, but because your perspective did. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are those who've survived storms and refused to let them define them. They've been through loss, rejection, betrayal, and pain, yet they still praise, they still smile, they still believe. That's not weakness, that's spiritual strength. That's what happens when you learn that the storm doesn't have the final word, God does. You learn that pain is temporary, but purpose is permanent. You learn that storms don't last, but they do leave something behind, a testimony, a lesson, a deeper understanding of who God is. When the storm is over and the sun finally breaks through, you'll look back and see that everything you thought would destroy, you actually pushed you closer to destiny. You'll realize that the storm was never meant to drown you, it was meant to direct you. It forced you to depend on God when nothing else made sense. It taught you that peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of trust. The storm might have been violent, but it was necessary because some blessings can only be born in the middle of chaos. So if you're standing in a storm right now, don't run from it. Don't curse it. Let fear convince you that it's over. Hold on. Stand still. Remember that the same God who brought you through every storm before will bring you through this one too. The wind may be howling, He's still whispering peace. The waves may be rising, but He's still in control. And when the time is right, when the lesson is learned, when your heart is ready, He'll speak the same words He spoke then. Peace, be still, and you'll see that the storm didn't break you. It built you. It didn't end you. It elevated you. It didn't silence your faith. It strengthened it. Because every storm you survive becomes proof that you are not alone, that you are protected, that you are destined. The storm is not your enemy. It's your evidence. Proof that even when everything around you is shaking, you can still stand firm. Because the God who calms the seas still speaks peace to your soul today.